I'm pretty excited. They announced the remaster of Diablo 2 coming out this year, so it's official. Activision Blizzard's most anticipated new release is a game that came out 20 years ago. While we're waiting on the remastered version, I want to showcase my favorite build from it. They're keeping all the stats and breakpoints of Diablo 2 exactly the same, and they're using the original engine to run the game, so what I'm about to show you should work when that comes out. This is a guide and showcase for an Uber-killing Tesladin. A Tesladin is a Paladin that uses Holy Shock Aura, which we can get from a Dream Shield and a Dream Helmet. With these two pieces of gear, everything around you will get struck by lightning every second or so. If you invest your skill points right, this will instantly vaporize almost everything in normal or nightmare difficulty. Once you step in the room, you don't even do anything, they all just fall over. In Hell difficulty, it might take more than 1 second for everything to melt away, but it's still pretty fast unless they're lightning immune. If they're lightning immune, your Conviction Aura removes their immunity when you get close, but after that the lightning still doesn't hurt them much, so you gotta give them a couple little kisses with your sword. If their immunity is so strong that your conviction doesn't break it, just whack them a few more times, no problem. The final two acts on Hell difficulty have a lot of big ugly guys that can tank a couple of your hits, so we're gonna build up a strong Zeal attack, and it will hit at its fastest speed, over 5 times per second, so you can still clean up crowds in the hardest areas of the game without breaking a sweat. You'll have 4 different auras active at the same time, and they all add large amounts of damage to your weapon each time you strike. And remember, you're striking 5 times per second. You also have Crushing Blow added to your attack. This lets you kill bosses incredibly quickly. As you probably know, Ubers are the most powerful enemies in the game, and it can take a team of people working together to kill them. Well, you can handle them comfortably on your own, and you won't even have to switch out any gear. With this build, you can take out any monster, any immunity in the game, so you'll never need anyone to help you. You can be as antisocial as you want. I tried dueling other people who were playing on Battle.net, and this setup did decently. It's honestly not too great in melee duels, but it has a great matchup against spellcasters, even if you forgot to use your aura like I did here. Unfortunately, some people thought I had bad manners, and it didn't help my case that I was accidentally shocking them as they were retrieving their bodies, so we're gonna just do a monster killing guide this time. Well, it's already 2 minutes in. I try to keep my videos short, but this one's a little different because I'm including explanations and some gameplay at the end. If you want to skip ahead, the timestamps are below, and I put the important notes on the side, so you can skip through and get the general idea. But if you want to hang out with me for 15 minutes while I talk about this game that's old enough to buy liquor, then you've hit the jackpot, my friend. Let's get started with the gear. At the heart of this build is the Dream Helmet and Dream Shield. These each have a level 15 shock aura when equipped, and their damage adds up to effectively a level 30 aura. These will be the only source of faster hit recovery unless you add charms, so you want to get at least 48% between both of them to hit the 5-frame breakpoint. Unfortunately, when I made mine, I didn't get very lucky on my hit recovery or resistance, so I'm supplementing them with these 2 resistance and recovery charms down here. For the shield, you want to put it in any of the elite shields you can find with a lot of resistances. I recommend using Sacred Charge for the higher block chance so we can put less points into dexterity. For the helmet, Bone Visage gets you the highest defense without putting any points in strength. For the armor, use Enigma. Being able to teleport speeds up everything you do. Who wants to go the long way around? The +2 to skills is great, the damage reduction is great, the huge boost to strength and running speed is great. If you put Enigma in a mage plate like I did here, then you won't have to put any stat points into strength to carry the rest of your gear. For the gloves, I highly recommend Laying of Hands. You mainly have them for the 20% attack speed, but the 350% damage to demons is huge. In this game, demon and undead are the only 2 poke types you'll fight against, and almost all the bosses are demons, so this gives you an incredible damage boost against like half of the stuff in the game. For the rings, you'll want Ravenfrost for its Cannot Be Frozen, attack rating, dexterity, and cold absorb, and I like to use a BK ring for the life leech and +1 to skills. For the belt, either Arachnid Mesh or Thunder Gods. This is a tough choice. On one hand, I just love T-Gods because Tesladins already have 85% max resist. This belt allows you to get to 95, and it has Lightning Absorb. If you're at 95 resist with a +20 Lightning Absorb, then any lightning attack below 800 damage will actually heal you. It's like a superpower. On top of all that, T-Gods adds even more lightning to your attack, and it gives strength and health. This should definitely be your belt of choice if you don't care about teleporting fast. On the other hand, Arachnid Mesh gives you +1 to skills, it slows targets, and the faster cast rate helps you teleport faster. I'll show you how useful it is in just a second. For the amulet, use Mara's, unless you're trying to teleport faster, in which case I'd use a 220 crafted amulet, meaning 2 to skills, 20 faster casting, and ideally some life leech and resistance. But that's like really hard to get, so your more realistic option is probably Mara's. For your backup weapon and shield, you will have Call to Arms and a Spirit Shield. You can put Call to Arms in any melee weapon, so try to get it on a scepter that has plus to Holy Shield or Redemption or both. Check this out, I traded a guy for this scepter with +1 to Redemption in it, and I put Call to Arms in that. I leave Redemption as the active aura on my backup weapon, so after I kill stuff, I can press the button to flip weapons and instantly heal and get mana, and then flip back. It makes it so I don't have to use potions very often. On the Spirit Shield, it's okay to have less than perfect cast rate, unless you're trying to hit 75, which you can do with this, but you're going to need a perfect roll of 35% faster cast rate on the shield, and you'll need that crafted amulet to get to 75 total and reach the breakpoint. I'll demonstrate the difference. Here's your normal teleport with no faster cast rate. It's a bit faster when you flip to your backup Spirit Shield, and here it is with the Spirit Shield and Arachnid's Belt. Here it is with a perfect Spirit, Arachnid's Belt, and a perfect amulet. You're hitting 75. If you have all that, and after you buff yourself, you switch out your backup for a Wizard Spike, you can get to the fastest possible teleport speed on a Paladin, or 125. But I don't like to carry extra gear and switch out, so let's just keep this simple. If you care about teleporting fast, use the FCR amulet and Arachnid's Belt with the perfect Spirit Shield, and good luck getting all that. If you care more about damage and survivability, then use Mara's amulet and T-God's Belt, which are much more reasonable to find. For the boots, use whatever you want. In terms of survivability, Water Walks are probably best in slot. They give you a whole bunch of life, the dexterity helps you get max block easier, and they raise your max fire resist. Sandstorm Treks are great too, and they help you get the poison resist that you might need if you didn't use the Mara's amulet. Gore Riders give the best boost to damage per second with their Deadly Strike, which means double damage. Open Wounds is great, and you get even more Crushing Blow from these, but I use War Travelers because the better magic find is fun to me. If I use War Travs and Geeds, I can get to around 275% magic find without any small charms. That's great because this guy's going to clear a lot of monsters, and I want to get my mileage out of it. So I saved your main weapon for last. It's the one piece of gear that makes it all come together. I recommend Last Wish and a Phase Blade. Some people choose Grief because of its plus 400 damage to each attack, and I recently discovered that there are years of heated debates on which one of these weapons is better. If you like seeing people coexisting and living in harmony, online forums are not the place to go. But I prefer Last Wish because it gives you a great healing source with life tap, and it gives you a huge boost of Crushing Blow. All the stats you want for an Uber Smiter in one package. It does just about as much damage as Grief because of its Might Aura when equipped. Your Mercenary and everyone else in your party gets to use your life tap and Might Aura. Another perk is the chance of casting Charged Bolt. Almost every time you use your Zeal attack, you launch a little wave of lightning bolts. This looks cool, it works well, and it totally fits our theme. However, with Last Wish, you'll be a little short on attack speed. And if you want to attack as fast as you can, you'll need to get that Act 1 Mercenary with a Faith Bow for her Fanaticism aura. Now, if you were to use Grief, you wouldn't have enough Crushing Blow to handle Ubers, well, unless you switch out gear, and you wouldn't have any life tap to heal with. However, if you were to pair that Grief with a High Lord's Amulet, you'll get a whole lot of Deadly Strike, and most importantly, you'll get to 75% attack speed without the Fanaticism aura. If you don't need that aura, then you don't need an Act 1 Faith Mercenary, and you can use a much better Act 2 Mercenary. In 8-player games, this Grief and High Lord setup should have a little bit better crowd control, but I tried both, and with all the lightning damage from the rest of the gear, it was hard to tell a difference between the two. Both Last Wish and Grief will 1 or 2 shot everything when you play solo, and even in higher player levels, the damage output was surprisingly similar, but only Last Wish has a good healing source, and only Last Wish can do Ubers, so that's what we use. Also, Last Wish has a chance to cast Fade when you get hit, which really helps your survivability. I've read that to force it to cast, some people go and stand in the fire next to that one good guy angel that just hangs out in hell for no reason, and then they just sit there, roasting, until the 6% chance finally hits. Now, I'm not trying to yuck anyone's yum, but this doesn't make much sense to do unless we're dueling other people playing the game. And even then. Anyway, so for your Mercenary, get her from Act 1 in normal mode because normal Mercenaries have the best stat points for some reason, and give her a Faith Rune Word, preferably socketed into a Great Bow because then you only need 30% extra attack speed for her to hit her fastest breakpoint. I got her to reach this by putting 2 attack speed jewels into a Giant Skull helmet. I chose Giant Skull because it gives her knockback, which gives her some breathing room and sets you up for some nice combo moves with your charge attack. For her armor, I used Ethereal Fortitude. I got it in an Archon plate because she's not very strong. So moving along to charms, I don't like to fill up my inventory with charms because where are you going to put your stuff? So for our charms, you won't need any charms except Annihilus and Torch. I mean, you probably don't even need those, and if you do decide to go without them, you'll have to spend more points in a Strength, Dex, and Conviction. The Torch adds a Fiery Inferno to some of your attacks. Even though it doesn't do much, it looks cool. You can only have one Torch at a time, so keep that in mind if you solo Ubers. But you don't really need the resistance from this. Remember, our Last Wish gives us Fade, which adds 56 to our resistances, and it'll be active most of the time, so you don't really need resistance charms. I went ahead and added a couple anyway because I guess I want to look awesome before I get faded too. To get 95% lightning resist with T-God's belt, I'll flip these two out for a couple lightning resist charms. And as I mentioned earlier, I use Geeds to juice up my magic find. I also threw in several poison charms, which stops Ubers from healing so fast. They honestly don't make much of a difference, but I'm going to get technical here. I include them because each one I pick up makes my damage number look bigger, and when I see a bigger number there, my brain releases a chemical which tells me I'm happy. In reality, we don't want to put too much thought into that number though, because your damage is usually way higher than what it shows because of your conviction aura. So, moving on to the skills. For the sake of demonstration, I'll use this token to reset my stat and skill points. We'll invest our stat points in a minute, but for now I'll put enough into Dex to hold my weapon, and I'll leave this sheet open so you can see how your skill points affect your damage. For defensive auras, the only two you want to touch are Resist Light and Salvation. Max both of these, then leave the rest of this tab alone. You'll see that Resist Lightning really boosts your damage output because of the lightning it adds to your shock aura, which is always active. Okay, now on the offensive tab, put 1 point into everything that leads up to Conviction. Make sure your primary attack weapon is equipped, and put around 14 hard points into Conviction, however much you need to get it to 24 with all your gear, so that it'll be 25 after you buff yourself with Battle Command. Why do we want level 25? Because at 25 you get 150 lower resist, which is as high as it goes. Any more points after 25 is kind of a waste. And remember, 0 points into Holy Shock because you already have level 30 of that from your helmet and shield. Now you've gotten the 3 Tesladin skills squared away, and we have a lot of points left. We can use those to make a decent Zealot Paladin. Zealots typically max Zeal, Sacrifice, and Fanaticism, but even a single point into Fanaticism after our gear will make you as fast as possible at every attack you use, so I don't max it. We do already get this aura from our Mercenary, it's the whole reason she's there, but unfortunately she's probably going to die during Ubers, so I always put 1 point into Fanaticism, that way I can flip to it myself, smite as fast as possible, and kill Ubers about as fast as a fully geared smiter. You don't ever need Fanaticism, you're just fine without it, but it speeds everything up. There are some situations where you'll want to turn it on. But before we max the 2 Zeal skills, you'll really want to point into Smite, Charge, and Holy Shield. This gives you 2 awesome 1-point wonder attack moves, and Holy Shield helps you get max block and triples your total defense. If we maxed Holy Shield instead of the Zeal skills, we'd easily get north of 13,000 defense. But we already have pretty high defense with just 1 point, and the enemies are going to be confused or blinded most of the time, so they're not going to hit you much anyway. And we want to make sure we can clear crowds fast when the game gets hard. So we're going to max Sacrifice and Zeal before Holy Shield. Each point into Sacrifice gives twice as big a damage bonus to Zeal than Zeal gives to itself, so max Sacrifice first. And the last skill to max will be Zeal, which will be maxed out around level 96 or 97. I could have maxed that out at level 93 if I didn't invest in having my own Fanaticism aura. Okay, so moving along to stat points, I put 0 points into Strength. When you're figuring out how much to put into Dexterity, make sure that your buffs are on and you've used Holy Shield. Make sure you flip back to your main weapon, then get the total chance to block over here to say 75%. This percentage is different from the one you see on your shield. Don't pay attention to the one on your shield. Once we get our block to 75%, we want as much into Vitality as we can get. And no points into Energy, ever. This build doesn't have a lot of damage reduction, so we want a lot of life. During boss fights, your life will replenish as fast as you lose it, so if we have a big tank of life, we'll be prepared for the worst. So, we have it all set up. Now, how do you play? Always have Conviction on 99% of the time. Without it, your abilities and attacks are nerfed. If you teleport, make sure you remember to flip Conviction back on when you're done. You'll use 3 main attacks in different situations. Zeal will be the attack you use the most, and this is the one where you whack them 5 times in 1 second. You want to get in the middle of a big crowd of enemies and use this because it can hit multiple targets. You're using a sword which doesn't have much range, so you want to get close for this to work well. Zeal works well on bosses too, except for Ubers. It would work well on Ubers, but they usually have their buddies around them, so that distracts your Zeal attack. Smite is the attack you want to use against Ubers. It's where you're literally swinging your shield at them. It doesn't do much damage, but it is guaranteed to hit, and it hits a single target. Smite does not trigger Deadly Strike, and it does not add any of your Tesla lightning damage, but it does trigger Life Tap, Open Wounds, and Crushing Blow. That makes it the perfect attack for Ubers, but it's not very useful in any other situation. And thirdly, Charge is kind of your wildcard attack. It's kind of fun, but you have to get the hang of it because it doesn't work in the middle of crowds. You basically run really fast, and if there is an enemy nearby, you smack them for one accurate high damage attack. This knocks them back if there's nothing behind them, and it knocks them back far enough to set up another charge. So you can just hold down the button for charge and keep knocking them back until they die. This is known as a charge lock, and it's useful in PvP also. The drawbacks are, you can only hit one thing at a time, you run out of mana fast, and it doesn't work well if you're already right next to him, so you want to switch and use Zeal after you close the distance. You can use Charge to get around fast too. One other drawback of Charge is there's this glitch in the game that makes you freeze in place sometimes. If this happens, you can interrupt the glitch by flipping to your backup weapon. It's an unfortunate glitch that's been in the game for decades, and hopefully they fix this when the game gets remastered. I'll tell you how to fight Ubers in a second, but for all non-Uber situations, there are two basic playstyles I'd recommend based on what gear you chose. If you put on the FCR amulet and the arachnids, you'll probably want to use your fast teleport to skip over the riffraff and take out the bosses. This is more efficient for magic finding because you'll spend less time getting there. If you used Mara's amulet and the T-God's belt, you'll have a slower teleport but higher survivability. So you'll want to engage weaker enemies, use charge a lot more, and you'll try to set up combo attacks with charge. To me, this is a lot more fun. It's about the journey, not the destination. Plus, more dead monsters means a higher chance of finding runes. When fighting Ubers, try to split them up and fight them one by one, and only use Smite on them. When your Mercenary dies, flip to Fanaticism if you put a point into it. If you really don't like taking risks, you can leave your Conviction aura on for Mephisto, because he uses it too. Since he has a level 20 Conviction and you have a level 25, you'll completely override his Conviction. The rule is, highest Conviction wins. The main thing that kills an Uber is Crushing Blow. That's the one that hits them for 12.5% of their remaining life. It goes fast until they're almost dead, and that last little bit takes the longest. All you really have to do is go up to the Uber, hold down the Smite attack button for like 20 seconds. While you do this, think about someone special to you, a close loved one. With your other hand, take out your phone and write them a genuine, heartfelt text. Let them know that you're finally conquering the biggest demons in your life, without even struggling, and without any professional help. So, anyway, that's how I play the Uber Tesladin. So I've been telling you why this is so great, but it does have some weaknesses. The first thing you might have noticed is, the setup is very expensive. Easily 10 high runes or more, so if you're starting the game or a new ladder season, this should not be your first character. Another drawback is, if you try to use this in PvP duels, a lot of people will put on lightning absorb gear once they realize that lightning is the source of your power. Your life gets harder when they do you dirty like that. Another thing, your Last Wish sword casts life tap, and it has hit blinds target. They both would be great on their own, but they override each other because they're technically both curses. They also compete with the confuse curse that your helmet and shield can cast. If a monster has life tap over their head, and you strike them, life tap gives you life on the first hit, but then they'll be blinded instead. So this isn't a weakness as much as too many strengths. And it wasn't a huge problem anyway because bosses cannot be blinded or confused. So life tap is the only curse that sticks around when you need it the most. Another weakness, this setup relies on melee attacks in the hardest places of the game, so you have to go up and get in each monster's face. Compare this to, say, a hammerdin, the build that's arguably the all-around best in the game. Hammerdins have one attack move that can hit multiple targets. The flying hammers just barrel through whatever's in the way. As the Tesladin, I can potentially deliver more damage to a single target, but I have to get close first. Hammerdins can just show up in the general area, launch a few hammers, and clear the whole area out with a few clicks. This means that Hammerdins are faster at clearing big open areas like the Chaos Sanctuary, especially in 8-player games. But Hammerdins need a lot of room to pull this off, and they need to position themselves a certain way sometimes. Some corridors are so narrow that a Hammerdin can't even land a hit. So in tight areas and hallways, our Uber Tesladin is way better. And Hammerdins do 0 damage against guys who are immune to magic, The Uber Tesladin has no immune deficiencies. Hammerdins can kill bosses really fast, but they get thrashed if they try to take on the Uber bosses solo. In my opinion, the Uber Tesladin is just more fun. He can solo Ubers like a smiter with the flashy room clearing abilities of an Aradin and the raw melee power of a Zealot. So it takes these 3 PvM builds and rolls them together in a synergistic way without losing any functionality. And you get to teleport. With all of your auras, you can supercharge your friends just by being near them. People will love to be in your party. And you'll be really hard to kill. And you have a critical mass of magic finds, around 200 to 300. Here's a list of places where monsters drop the highest level gear. Normally, magic find characters can only choose places from this list where no one is immune to them, but the Uber Tesladin can handle every type of immunity. Even in 8-player games, he can handle every place with no difficulty. The pit is one of the least challenging areas on this list. Most of the monsters there are weak enough to get zapped into oblivion when you step into the room. But that lets you speedrun it and clear out almost every single monster in roughly 2 minutes. Now, I play on Battle.net, so I get a randomly generated map. I was flying blind on this one, but it's one of my faster clear times for a solo pit run. So I'll quit talking and let you see it in action.
Forgive me.
Well, that's it for this showcase and tutorial. They just released the alpha for D2 Resurrected, and it looks like this build is going to work on it. So I hope you enjoyed this, I hope it was useful, and make sure to check out the other 2 videos that I have. I'll see you next time.